Hey guys, so today's video is going to be a chatty get ready with me, and I wanted to chat about some recent news that has come out in the realm of cruelty-free cosmetics, as well as, we have a cat visitor here, hi Tala, as well as some, I don't want to say drama, but I guess differences of opinion within the cruelty-free community that I wanted to just kind of share my thoughts on as a consumer myself and how I'm going to be moving forward. So this past weekend, I purchased some products from Wet n Wild and Physicians Formula for the first time in 3 or 4 years, I think. So if you aren't familiar, both of these brands for a long time were considered to be cruelty-free, and in 2019-2020, both brands began selling in stores in mainland China, which for a very long time pretty much automatically meant that they weren't cruelty-free because the Chinese government required animal testing on all cosmetics that were sold in stores. So on January 4th, Cruelty-Free Kitty, who is one of the most well-known cruelty-free beauty bloggers, she has a list of brands that she has determined to be cruelty-free on her website. She made a post on Instagram announcing that Wet n Wild, Physicians Formula, along with Herbal Essences, Dove, First Aid Beauty, Supergoop, Rituals, Aussie, Simple, and Suave are now on her cruelty-free brand list. She now is confident that these brands don't test on animals in 2023. I'm a big fan of Cruelty-Free Kitty. I've been using her website as a resource to inform my own shopping habits for a couple years at this point, and I really trust her opinion. So when I saw that post, I got super excited, and the next day, while I was at the drugstore, I picked up some products from these brands that I had been excited to try. Since then, since I purchased these products, I've become aware that there's actually been a bit of debate in the cruelty-free community as to the accuracy of this post from Cruelty-Free Kitty. So I'm going to get a little bit into at least what I know about the situation, but ultimately, this is a conversation that I am really just aware of as a consumer myself. I don't really interact with brands as far as their cruelty-free policies very often. I'm certainly no expert in Chinese laws, animal testing laws. I prefer to leave that up to the experts. And this is supposed to be a get ready with me, so I'm going to start putting on makeup while I chat with you, but I am going to use these products today while I get ready, while we talk about them. So this is the Physicians Formula Butter Believe It Foundation. I've heard so many good things about this. You might remember long ago, the Physicians Formula Healthy Foundation was my favorite foundation. It was my holy grail. I was devastated when they ended up not being cruelty-free. I wasn't able to buy it anymore. They do still sell that foundation, but it's kind of hard to find nowadays. I think it's exclusively sold at Walmart and on Physicians Formula's website and possibly Amazon as well. But the Butter Believe It Foundation is a little bit more readily available, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. So that's the one I ended up getting, and this I have in the shade Fair. So going back to animal testing laws in China. So as I said before, for a long time, any brand that was sold in stores in China could not be considered cruelty-free because those brands were required to test on animals per Chinese laws. This I'm reading off of Cruelty-Free Kitty's blog post, which I'll link that below and anything else I'm referencing in today's video. But this post says that China has been gradually relaxing their animal testing laws in recent years. Starting June 30th, 2014, companies were able to enter the Chinese market without testing their products on animals as long as 1. The products were manufactured locally, and 2. The products did not consist of special use cosmetics. Special use cosmetics includes things like sunscreen, deodorants, hair dyes. Since May 2021, China extended the possibility to bypass pre-market testing to products that were not domestically manufactured. This means that it's currently possible for any beauty brand to sell their products in China without having them tested on animals as long as they are not considered to be special use cosmetics. However, in addition to pre-market animal testing, there has also apparently been a threat of post-market animal testing in China, which means that in the case of a consumer complaint, someone has an allergic reaction to a product and complains about it, the government can take those products off the shelves and test them on animals then. So even though pre-market testing was no longer much of a threat, many brands who sold in China, like Physicians Formula, Wet n Wild, were still by a lot of people not considered cruelty-free because there was a chance that they could be tested on animals in the event of a consumer complaint. And so here's what Cruelty-Free Kitty says now about post-market animal testing. Although the possibility of pre-market animal testing has been lifted for over a year, we did not immediately consider all brands sold in China to be cruelty-free due to the possibility of post-market animal testing. And I do remember Cruelty-Free Kitty seeming to have a really strong stance against these brands when that possibility of post-market testing was there, which is why I immediately trusted her announcement, because I was like, oh, she seems really concerned about the post-market testing issue. So if she says that post-market testing is no longer something to worry about, I'm inclined to believe her. She says, at Cruelty-Free Kitty, we've been monitoring for changes to both pre-market and post-market laws in China for the past decade. In recent years, official documents show that not only were there non-animal testing methods approved for post-market testing, but animals are no longer being used in these tests. As of 2023, we're confident that post-market animal testing is no longer a threat for beauty brands in China. So that is the information we have from Cruelty-Free Kitty. I do have some questions. Number one, I would love to be able to see these documents. I'm guessing they're classified documents or something that the average person can't just look up and read for themselves. And actually this whole issue with post-market testing has been kind of a hot button issue in the cruelty-free space for a few years now. I remember in 2020 I actually made a video talking about this too. Some cruelty-free beauty bloggers, mainly Jen, aka My Beauty Bunny, who has another, website with a cruelty-free brand list and everything. She made a blog post titled, Why I Changed My Views on Post-Market Testing in China, Why I'm Adding Wet n Wild, First Aid Beauty, and Others Back to My Cruelty-Free List, where she essentially explained that based on her various conversations with nonprofits, brands, and consultants in China, she believed that post-market animal testing was very unlikely to happen, and she personally didn't see a good reason to keep these brands on her non-cruelty-free list. And by the way, most of these brands have also been on PETA's cruelty-free brand list for a while as well. PETA has considered these brands cruelty-free. I guess they didn't consider post-market animal testing to be a threat either. So PETA, My Beauty Bunny, a few other cruelty-free bloggers all had these brands on their cruelty-free list, but then there were also quite a few who didn't consider these brands cruelty-free, like Logical Harmony, Leaping Bunny, and even Cruelty-Free Kitty for a long time was very strongly in the camp of, if there's any chance at all of post-market animal testing, those brands aren't allowed on my cruelty-free list. So it's always been kind of up in the air. It kind of seems like all these different people and organizations it's almost like they have all gotten different information as far as what the laws really say. So it just makes it all very confusing for the consumer. So a few days after this post from Cruelty-Free Kitty came out, Leaping Bunny made a post on their TikTok basically saying that they believe post-market animal testing does still happen in China, and if a brand is going to sell in China, that they need to join the Leaping Bunny China qualification program, is what they call it. If a brand joins that program, then, Leaping Bunny will monitor them and do some yearly audits to make sure that they're not testing on animals, and that in the event of a consumer complaint, the brand will they'll just recall all their products, pull them off the shelves before the post-market animal testing would happen. That's what Leaping Bunny says. I am kind of now in this place where I don't know who to believe. And I want to say I've always trusted Leaping Bunny. I've always appreciated the work that they do. I am inclined to believe them, but at the same time, if Cruelty-Free Kitty was so strongly against these brands, for the longest time she kept these brands on her not cruelty-free list because she felt there was a small possibility of post-market animal testing. What would she have to gain from adding these brands to her list? As far as I'm aware, it's free for a brand to be listed on Cruelty-Free Kitty's website. Now, Leaping Bunny does claim that it's free for a brand to be certified by them, and they say that the only time a brand would have to pay is if they want to put the Leaping Bunny logo on their products. They have to pay a licensing fee. However, on their website, they have information about their Leaping Bunny China qualification program, where they have a checklist of everything that the brand would have to be able to ensure in order to be part of this program. And if you scroll down, the second to last question on this checklist is, a company that registers products must undergo both pre-market and post-market audits at the company's expense for a predetermined number of years to ensure that animal testing has not been conducted. Would your company be prepared to submit and pay for a one-time pre-market audit for each product registration and a yearly post-market audit for a fixed period of time? So based on that publicly available information, it doesn't sound to me like it's actually free for a brand to be certified under this China program. How much money Leaping Bunny would make off of those audits, I don't know. Long story short, some prominent cruelty-free sources consider these brands to be not at risk of animal testing, and then some other prominent cruelty-free sources don't see it that way. So that leaves us consumers kind of confused, because who are we supposed to believe? Like, these are all different people and bloggers and organizations that we trusted, and now they're all saying different things. So, like, what are we supposed to do? To me, this is such a nuanced conversation, and I don't really think there's a right or wrong, personally. Based on that information and my discernment as a consumer, I personally am not super worried about the possibility of post-market animal testing in China. It sounds to me like, at the very least, it would be highly unlikely for post-market testing on animals to happen. Furthermore, I don't necessarily even know if this debate is really worth going over time and time again, because, you know, we've already kind of had this debate in 2020. I talked about it in a video then, where I kind of came to the same conclusion, where I was like, to me, these brands like Wet n Wild, I think of them more as gray area brands, and I feel like it's really up to each individual to decide for themselves whether they're comfortable buying from these brands or not. I've also talked before about how I've actually taken the term cruelty-free out of like my channel tagline. You know, I used to have on my channel banner cruelty-free beauty, and I really started to, in 2020, when I started kind of having this like identity crisis about cruelty-freeness, I didn't really like the term cruelty-free because it's a little misleading. Really, cruelty-free is just the term that we've all kind of come to accept to mean that a brand doesn't test their products on animals. And to be very clear, I am 100% against animal testing, 100%. I always will be. I will always speak out against it. I think animal testing, especially on cosmetics, should absolutely be a thing of the past. There is no reason for animals to suffer so that we can wear makeup. But it's becoming increasingly clear to me that it's almost impossible for us as consumers who want to do the right thing for the animals. It's becoming really difficult for us to even know what the truth is. And none of the people who are supposed to be keeping us informed are able to agree on what the truth is. And so I think it's kind of unfair for the onus to be on the consumer. I didn't really like the term cruelty-free because it doesn't necessarily mean that a product is actually free of cruelty. There are other types of cruelty that can go into producing products, like child labor, poor treatment of employees and factory workers, sustainability issues. There's just so many other factors that are equally important, I think, to consider that just don't get nearly as much airtime as animal testing. So I still occasionally will use the term cruelty-free because it's kind of that, most people know what it means. It's the widely accepted term, and most people know that it's referring to animals, but really I think a more accurate term would be not tested on animals. But I decided not to necessarily brand myself as a cruelty-free YouTuber, even though I do still do my very best to only purchase from brands that don't animal test. I guess I kind of wanted to have a more holistic approach to ethical beauty as best I can, and I don't think that cruelty-free is like the end-all be-all anyway. Even though animal testing is an important issue to me. I don't want that to be the only thing I focus on my channel, because there are so many other types of cruelty that can go into cosmetics. So that is why I made, animal cruelty-free a little bit less of a primary focus on my channel, even though it's still part of it. And I don't necessarily talk about it as much as I once did, because, like I said, I think there's just so much nuance to it, and also just so much that I don't know and that I don't understand about what truly makes a brand cruelty-free, that I don't feel like I'm really the authority that needs to be, reporting on this stuff. So that's kind of where I've been at with that for the past couple of years. And I also feel like since it's the start of a new year, it's a good time anyway for me to update you on my stance on these things. So 2023, I am still doing my very best to buy animal cruelty-free cosmetics. I have loosened up my personal requirements a little bit. I'm going to start my eyeshadow look with this is the Wet n Wild Call Me Sunshine palette. I mentioned recently that I somewhat regretted decluttering my Urban Decay Naked Honey palette, and someone actually mentioned that this was a dupe for that. And at the time I wasn't purchasing from Wet n Wild, but as soon as the news came out, I saw this at the store and I knew I was going to grab it, because this is like Urban Decay Naked Honey, but better, because it has this beautiful, like, sparkly, shifty duochrome shade in it. Isn't that so pretty? Yeah. So I've already played with this once on my own, but we're gonna play with it again today. So my stance used to be that if a brand wasn't on either Leaping Bunny or Logical Harmony's cruelty-free list, I would not consider them cruelty-free. Both of those are still some of my top resources that I not only use myself, but that I recommend to people, but I've loosened up a little bit since then. I feel like really like 2021, 2022, after I kind of had this shift in thinking. I'm going to start out my crease with this shade here. I decided that I would start, widening my criteria a little bit, and I also started looking at some other bloggers like Cruelty-Free Kitty and Ethical Elephant, who Ethical Elephant, by the way, also has an amazing page about ethical mica, brands that use ethical mica. I did a video actually using ethical mica brands, and I referenced her list because I think she's the only one I know of that does that. So I think that's super important, and I really appreciate that she has done the digging on that. So I kind of broadened the lists that I look at, and basically where I'm at now is, as long as, and I look at PETA too, even though I don't take their word like in and of itself, as long as like 2 or more of those lists agree with each other on a brand, I will go ahead and consider that cruelty-free to me. But to me, that's good enough, and that just takes a lot of stress off of me, and I think it also allows me to be able to talk about a little bit of a wider variety of brands. And really, like, one thing that is important to me is to be able to talk about things that are accessible to people, both financially and geographically. And especially the more drugstore brands that I can use, the better for me, obviously, because that gives me more affordable options too. But it also gives me more affordable options to be able to share with my audience. So that's where I'm at now. And so you may be asking, where does that leave brands like Wet n Wild and Physicians Formula, Dove, Suave? And I actually did also purchase a shampoo from each of those brands at the same time that I bought these things. I personally feel comfortable enough buying from these brands. I think, to me, they're good enough. They're cruelty-free enough for me to feel okay about it. But I totally think that there are valid reasons not to buy from these brands if you don't feel comfortable with them. So I really, at the end of the day, I think it's up to each person. If you do try to shop cruelty-free, I think it's up to each person to decide what works for them. And that's just where I'm at. So I will, at least for the time being, unless more new information comes out, I will be buying from these brands. I'll recommend products from these brands. And I think it's important to do your own research and decide, what feels right to you. So I'm gonna go in with this shade now, this matte brown here. That's where I'm at right now. Another thing I wanted to touch on about these brands, a lot of people were saying that, you know, they didn't want to support these brands because even though now Cruelty-Free Kitty says that they're cruelty-free, it's not like the brands actually did anything. You know, it was really more of a change in the laws rather than these brands actually deciding to not test on animals. And, you know, that's valid. If you want to continue boycotting these brands for that reason, I think that's, you know, that's fair. I do want to say that, like, when these brands did expand into China, we still don't even know how prominent post-market animal testing was at that time. At least I don't. And these brands, they did claim that they were going to remain cruelty-free. They actually remained certified by PETA. So it was kind of like, it just kind of depended on who you asked, whether or not these brands were cruelty-free for the longest time. Regardless of that, while I do agree it's disappointing that these brands would choose profit over animals, to me it's not so much about these brands having morals, because I don't really think any large company is capable of having morals. To me, what's important when I'm considering animal cruelty in cosmetics is I just want to be sure that my money is not going towards supporting animal testing. And if now Wet n Wild is 99.9% or however likely it is that they're not testing on animals, the way I see it, so many brands once tested on animals and now don't. And to me, what's important is what's happening now in the present. I do remember, you know, Wet n Wild was kind of shady when they did expand into China. It seemed like they kind of tried to hide it there, which, you know, is frustrating that they did that. But again, I'm not surprised. Like, I'm not surprised when brands do shady things because that's the world we live in. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot to say what I was doing, but I put this in the crease, then add a little more definition to the crease with this shade, then I deepened up the outer corner with this dark brown, then I put this shade all over my lid, which was really pretty, and then I topped that with this beautiful sparkly duochrome. And you can see just how sparkly that shade is. It makes such a pretty topper. So that is how I feel about that. And I completely understand that everybody's going to have a different opinion. I've even said before, I think there are plenty of valid reasons to choose not to make cruelty-free a part of your shopping habits. If things like accessibility make that difficult for you, or if there are just other ethical issues that you prioritize over that, I think that's totally valid. And if anything, you know, all of this has just shown me that there's a lot more nuance to this conversation than I ever thought there was in the past. And I think we all just need to get more comfortable with not always having the answers. There's not always going to be a black and white answer as to whether or not a brand tests on animals or allows others to test on animals on their behalf. Yeah, the more digging you do, the more confusing it gets, in my opinion. So I don't really, and that's not our fault, right? Like, it's not our fault that it's so confusing. So I think we all just have to do the best we can and not lose sleep over it. After this video, honestly, I'm probably not going to talk about this very much because, like I said, I don't really know more than anyone else, so I'm not going, I don't feel like I'm really the person to ask about this stuff, and this is kind of just what I've decided. Like, even if I didn't have a YouTube channel, this is what I would be deciding for me, myself, as a consumer, and that's really just what I want to encourage you all to do, is not to necessarily do exactly what someone else is doing, but decide for yourself what works for you and do that. For me, this is just what feels right at the moment, but if that changes, I'll let you know. But I don't really think that this debate is worth continuing to go over and over again and again, because in the grand scheme of things, if we're looking at the ethics of our makeup as a whole, this is just one really small, minute detail of one small piece of the puzzle, right? If cruelty-free is one small piece of the puzzle, then whether or not post-market animal testing is a possibility in China is just a really tiny part of that. But I'm thinking after this video, I'm probably gonna just put this topic to rest. I don't really feel like it needs to be an ongoing discussion on my channel. I will continue to keep an eye out for any other information that comes out, and if anything changes or, you know, my stance changes, I'll let you know. But for now, you know, I kind of look at these brands as they're sort of in this gray area, and we all just have to decide for ourselves whether to purchase from them or not. So that is that. The final of the 3 new products that I bought. This is the Wet n Wild Mega Last Lipstick in Skinny Dipping. And these lipsticks, the packaging has gotten a little bit of a glow up since I used to purchase from Wet n Wild years ago. They used to be in much more like simple packaging, but now they kind of have this cute little lip there. And yeah, the packaging just feels a lot nicer. And I just used the Kokie lip liner in nude before this, but I'd been looking for a good cool toned nude lipstick, and I'm really happy with this one. It's kind of like a My Lips But Better sort of shade. Like, this color is pretty close to my natural lip color, and it's really nice. I like it a lot. By the way, this Butter Believe It foundation, so far, I've worn it about 3 times now. So far, really impressed. I haven't given it like a long wear test, so I'll have to do that next to see like how it wears throughout a long day. But it has really high coverage, more coverage than any of my other foundations, so I kind of like that because I feel like it fills a little bit of a gap in my collection. I didn't really have any full coverage foundation, so it's nice to have that now. But even though it's full coverage, it looks really natural and skin-like on my skin. And it's just got a really nice kind of middle-of-the-road skin-like finish. It's not super matte, but it's not super dewy either. It sort of feels like it has a little bit of an oil-controlling property to it, but it's not stifling on my skin at all. And it doesn't seem to cling to dry patches on me, so this is looking promising. But anyway, that is this video. I think that is everything I wanted to chat about today, but I just kind of wanted to give my updated thoughts and explain, whoa, I just clapped really loud, and explain where I am at in regards to cruelty-free consumption. Moving forward, at least as of right now, you will be seeing these brands pop up here and there on my channel. Please decide for yourself whether you want to support them or not, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please be kind in the comments as well to each other and to me. You know, we're all just figuring it out. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon in my next video. Bye.